Hello, everyone. My name is Uwais Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. Now we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. So for those listening on Apple Podcast or on Spotify, please leave a rating for the podcast. So if you're joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Mphahlela Mokgatle, a chartered accountant who is the head of entrepreneurial business at BDO South Africa. He's also a former SAICA top 35, under 35, and he's also a life coach. Mphahlela, thanks so much for joining me today.
How you doing, Wade? Good in yourself, man.
Um,
Thanks a lot for having me.
I appreciate it. That's a very long title, but let's jump into it. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Mphahlela Mokgatle? Give us the backstory.
Yeah, I mean it's a long story, but let's try and get to the crux of it, right? Mphahlela is born and bred in the heart of Soweto in Meadowlands. The guys that know it, they call it in the fire. I mean, when you're born in Soweto, you feel like you've got the flagship. You know, it's like being born in Aldos and being born. You know, it's one of those prominent townships. Born and bred into to a very healthy family, good family, and went to JP High School for Boys, and that's where the chartered accountancy dream starts. You know, so thanks to Mr. Wallendorf, who was our accounting teacher, and I was in the top 3 in accounting. He actually said, "Guys, I need you guys to prepare some CVs." And fast forward, we've got interviews at BDO. It was myself, Najveer, a friend of mine, and Cole. Still good friends with these guys that we've actually been friends from actually grade 8. We then make it into BDO, all 3 of us, the 3 musketeers, and we set off on a journey to become chartered accountants, right? So we also all go to WITS. As luck would have it, we all land up at WITS, and we study to become chartered accountants. And we get through, obviously, the exams, you make it, but that's not necessarily how the story went. So they passed and I didn't. And this happened in 3rd year. I got 49 for FINEC. And when you get 49, you say, but why don't they just give me the 1%? Give me 1%, I move on, I'm great. Then, I'm in 4th year, I do my CTA, and, the story goes. But that's not what happened. And I think that in life, that was the first big lesson for me. Having not failed before, having not known what failure is, having passed everything, having aced everything, having applied to only WITS, getting accepted, you get this chip on your shoulder and you think, oh, well, I guess whatever I try at, I'm good at. And that's not how life works. Long story short, effectively, I had to actually do my articles and do CTA while studying. It was a monster. It was very difficult. And for those watching who are in that space and thinking it's not possible, it is possible, but it takes a lot of sacrifices. My first lesson there was knowing that failure is okay. But the second one was knowing that you're going to have sacrifices in life. And all these lessons were happening very early on in my career. I was like, am I cut out to become a chartered accountant? Am I meant to be a chartered accountant? Is this something that is meant for me, or is it meant for different people? I then qualified as a chartered accountant, having passed the board exam and having written 2 in the same year. So I pretty much caught up in terms of, if you want to call it, catching up. But at the same time, we've got this notion of doing things in record time. But that's not how life works. Not everything has to be done in record time. And what is record time? It's the standards that are placed by other people. So completed articles. And then what initially happened was I've always had a knack to be very entrepreneurial. I was very entrepreneurial from the get-go. A colleague of mine, Rory Sankole, we then started a business that used to sell ties. And I'm actually wearing one of the founding ties that we started selling on this interview. And we found that chartered accountants were not looking like chartered accountants. You walk into a room and you're like, I'm going to expect to see a chartered accountant. You walk into surgery, you're expecting to see a doctor in scrubs and looking like they're about to have a heart operation. But we didn't see that with chartered accountants. So we're like, let's elevate the way chartered accountants look. Let's get them looking good. And then we just started selling ties. We started selling ties. From the ties, it evolved to a tie box. And from the box, we actually then created a full set. It had socks, it had a tie, it had cufflinks, it had tie pins. And all of a sudden, CA started looking very professional. So we said, oh, well, I guess this is a business, right? And that's where Decorum was born. And that's how we started having Decorum Bespoke, which has later done amazing stuff. And quite recently just came back from Milan Fashion Week. So, I mean, all of these have come full circle for us, and it's quite amazing. We then had to part ways within the business, and my wife then bought the 50% within the business. And the reason for that was that Roysang then moved off and became a lecturer at Northwest University. And it was not going to work with one person being in Joburg. And that's a game. That's how business works. Some things work, some things don't work. My wife then bought the 50% in the business, and then she came on board onto the business, and we've been running that business since. I then finished articles, and I do not want to become an audit partner. My character is not audit partner, but the business says you have to become an audit partner. You're good at audit. I'm like, yes, I'm good at it, but I don't like it. And it's quite bold. I mean, you just finished article, you're fresh, eh? You just a CA that's just qualified. What do you know? But I knew that I was a person. My job, I know how to sell. That is what I'm good at. I'm passionate about speaking. I'm passionate about people. I know what I enjoy, and it's not audit. I was good at audit. I actually found an RI within 3 months of actually doing articles and reported it, went all the way to URBA. Patricia Stock, who's the current CEO of SAICA, was my mentor. She let me run. She gave me, the freedom. And I really thank her to this day for all that she's done for me within my career. And when I look back and I say, well, maybe I was a good auditor, but it just wasn't for me. I believe that when you wake up in the morning, the passion must be there. And I was not passionate about audit. I then got headhunted by FNB, and I left, went to FNB. And when I got to FNB, it was quite interesting. I mean, I thought that I'm going away from audit, but then I realized, I knew what was going to happen today, next month, because everything is done. You're not building anything new. You're not changing anything. I got excited when the auditors were coming, like, oh, great, let's have fun here. And the then CEO of BDO called me, Mark Stewart, and said, let's have coffee. How are you feeling? Is this what you enjoy doing? I said, no, I don't actually. I'd like to come and start something called business development at BDO. It's never been done before, but mandatory audit firm rotation is about 5 to 6 years away. Let's start this. Let's build a relationship. Let's make sure that when we walk into a proposal, we've actually built relationships, and you're not walking in cold, because that's not how you win work. People do business with people they trust, not at RFP stage. So he gave me the nod. He trusted me, and he said, okay, well, come back to BDO and start this new division that didn't exist. It's a big risk, but let's see how far you get with it. And we built a remarkable relationship. We won a good amount of work. We lost some work within firm rotation. And I ran that for about 8 years, and I ran business development nationally, built the team from 1 to about 8. We started having copywriters. We started having a full research team. We started bidding proper big bids from a JSE level. We were now invited to tables we never had. We had alumni programs. We had NED programs. And it was remarkable with all that work. Then that's how I landed up on top 35 under 35 from a SAICA perspective. And then about a year ago, I said, okay, well, yeah, it's time to hang up the boots from that perspective, get back on the field and look after what we've called something that we've also come up with, which I've had fun with, creating brand new roles that don't actually exist, because people say, but what is an entrepreneurial business? What do you actually do in entrepreneurial business? An entrepreneurial business is actually me coming in and becoming your partner. Just like how you are a CFO, I'm an outsourced CFO that helps with strategy, that comes in and says, well, I'm part of your business. Let's grow this business. How do we get it to new heights? How do we get you funding? What do we need to do? Where do we go for your business to actually leverage? Do we need to bring in SEO? Do we need to build from a marketing perspective? So I become that partner that sits in video, but actually work for your business. How do we grow that specific business? Are we talking a payroll plus model? What do we need to have hugging your business from A to Z before you do a transaction? What do we need to do? Who do we need to speak to? So that's when I land up into this fresh role. I'm a year old within it. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Everything is in the cloud. So we're having a lot of fun with technologies and learning, and also at the same time building with entrepreneurs, because everyone keeps on saying, if South Africa is going to be great, it's going to come from the SME space. But we're saying, but who's supporting that SME space? How do we support that SME space and let it grow? Look, wait, I've said a mouthful, but that's pretty much who I am. And at the end of the day, I'm a human being. I think that's the biggest thing. Besides the titles and everything we've done, I'm human first.
And before we go over to the questions outside of work?
Outside of work, I'm a father. I've got a daughter that's 1 year, 6 months. So we're quite busy. We're running around in the house. We're very busy climbing stairs. We're blocking things. We're baby proofing. It's one of those. I'm a husband to a lovely wife. a very beautiful wife that, has been with me since varsity days. So I'm quite fortunate from that perspective. And then I enjoy just, taking it easy, relaxing, watching the businesses grow, having time, deep thoughts with business people, having conversations, and just I'm quite relaxed, very, very relaxed.
Now that gives us a good understanding. Now, you've given us a good intro into you, but you are one of the few chartered accountants that excel at business development. Well, not one of the few, but in the minority. Most accountants, they shy away from sales roles. Yet you headed up for a massive organization. So how did you get over that negative mindset of sales that many accountants have?
It's very difficult, and I think what's important to get over it and get it across the line is that actually we sell on a daily basis. You walk into any store, you actually will sell yourself without even realizing. Subconsciously, you're actually selling. The way you present yourself, you actually in sales mode. And what firm rotation, the beauty of it actually opened up the floor to say, but hold on, those that have been hiding in the corners, come now, let's have conversations. And it gave us an opportunity to say, well, let's upskill, let's have training modules, let's bring in external guys that have run big companies to say, how do you present? So we had presentation, but we also had training on understanding personalities. It was very important for us to understand that most chartered accountants, as you rightly said, if you look at it, they're probably INTJs. They're very much introverts, most of them. They don't like actually having conversations. And, so we needed to understand that we need to play on strengths. And a lot of the times, business is what we do. We throw people in what they're uncomfortable in, and then we try and measure them. It's counterproductive, because you're actually going to have people not enjoying it. So you find the guys that will lead, the guys that are more comfortable, and we bring in the subject matter expert, because in order to, unfortunately, you're selling the person. They want to know, do you have the technical ability? Yes, Pat, you can speak, but who's the partner? How is this partner going to answer the tough question? If the board says do not qualify, will this person not qualify because of the fees? We need to know what we're dealing with. So it took a lot of time, coaching, training, one-on-ones, prep work, and typically a lot of time everyone would see the presentation, but they wouldn't see the back end work that was happening, where we're sitting late at night and crafting the story and saying, you need to have the conversation. It's not natural, but we worked on it. And it took a lot of time, but it actually worked, because the guys that were saying, oh, I'm an introvert, all of a sudden, they were the first ones to present and say, when is the dry run? Why are we not having a dry run? I thought the dry run was... So it then happens when you also understand the character and how those characters, what moves them, what kind of recognition model do they like? If I'm an introvert, what do I like? And I mean, a lot of people talk about the green people, the yellow people, the red people. What motivates a red? How do you get a red to come out and actually... So we needed to learn all of that and learn a bit of psychology. It took a bit of psychology and a bit of training, but I do think everyone can really sell. It might not be on the same levels, but everyone can actually sell, because you had to go to an interview to get the job. You have to speak at the board meetings. You have to actually present to the audit comp. So unfortunately, it's happening. It's part of it. It's just that it's at a different scale. And as soon as you make people comfortable as opposed to forcing it, it then has a lot of embracing.
It's interesting what you say there, because the only way that I learned sales was I was forced into the situation, because I was in a role where business development was just part of it and somebody had to do it. And then you realize, you learn that you just learn to take no's, and it's learning to take no's is just part of it.
Yeah.
But let's say there's an accountant out there who wants to get better at sales, but they don't know where to start. Do you have any tips for them?
Yeah, I think the first tip, if you look at it, is just to stand in front of the mirror and introduce yourself. Just do an intro. This is who I am. I'm Mphahlela Mokgatle. I head up business development. From a business development, what do I do? So also, when you're doing that, record it, right? So you record it in front of the mirror, and then you play it in slow motion. When you watch it back, you're actually going to start seeing, oh, I said When I said Mphahlela Mokgatle, I said Okay, how many am I saying? Where's my head when I speak? So small little things. As soon as you adjust that, you adjust your posture, you say, hi, I'm Mphahlela Mokgatle. I head up Entrepreneurial Business at BDO, and I'm here at your service. The way you command it, the way you speak, the tone, the voice. So you work on the small little things. Say, how do I introduce myself? What is my intro? What are the 2-3 things that I want to cover? Then it starts pretty simply. At the first, you will go in and say, okay, this is what I'm going to cover. I'm going to cover how to speak, This is how I'm going to speak, and this is how I'm going to close. First and foremost, this is how so you literally put an agenda, because a lot of the times what we do, we want to write everything we want to say. That is a trap. What you're going to do, you're going to sit down and you're going to read it, regurgitate it, and if you forget a line, it throws you. So I do not recommend having a written script. Rather know your agenda. What are you going to talk about? What does it entail? How are you going to cover it? You say it at the beginning, you cover it, and then you repeat. Just to reiterate, I spoke about looking at your head, not nodding, sitting straight, having the right posture. And that was my talk. So you actually have to practice it. It's like accounting. You do a consolidation. You have to practice that console, because next time the console is actually a de facto control, and all of a sudden you didn't actually consolidate because you thought it was less than 20%. It was not for example, an investment in an associate or a JV or full-on consolidation. But you have to practice. The more you practice, the better you get at it. You have to practice it. It's one of those that you have to practice, and you have to keep on, call it, that skill, you just sharpen the pencil. It's not a skill, especially if you're uncomfortable. Some people are good at it. It's just the small things that they just have to tweak, and that's it.
Okay, I think that's great advice. Just switching back to your career now, in your long career, you spent a few months out of public practice. You mentioned that you spent a little bit of time in corporate. It might have been a short time, but what did you learn about yourself in that short period?
I'm an entrepreneur. I know for a fact. Because in these big, massive corporates, it's done. You're not going to come in and build a new product. You might, but there's like a tech team there. There's no, and what's important is knowing yourself. Some people like that. They like that they don't have to get to work and come up with a new innovation. They can do what they did last week. They're comfortable. They can do what they want, peace, and that's okay. But if you know and you can feel it, that I don't want peace. I like having chaos. I like friction around me, and I like fixing things. And I'm that kid that is always got like Lego toys all over the place, but I know what I'm building. There's people who like order. And if you like order and you enjoy structure, and and also a lot of people, I think the generations have moved. We were, as a millennial myself, I mean, the Gen Zs have shown us that, look, it's not the normal way of doing things. You don't have to follow the same path. We've got chartered accountants who are influencers, and you're like, but why would you be an influencer when you're a chartered accountant? Surely, but they're looking at it and saying, how do I pivot? There is different, as you said, there's many ways to skin a cat. There's different rules, there's different roles that you can play, as opposed to following the same narrative. And that's the beauty of it. So within sitting in corporate, I realized that this is a structure that's done. There's nothing I'm going to change, because the levels and the time it takes for this Titanic to turn is about 5-6 years, for example. And in the 5-6 years, given my character, knowing who I am, I like dynamic. I like change. I like things moving. I like quick. It is not my character. And I think it's important to people say, who are you? You need to know yourself first before you say, oh, but this doesn't work in a corporate. No, probably you were not the mold for it. You can take a seed, but if you put it on top of concrete, it'll never grow because it's on concrete. But take the same seed and put it in soil. It'll flourish. Give it water, give it sunlight. It'll flourish because it's in the right environment. Sometimes we go into the wrong environment and think we will thrive. You'll find that the right environment is actually knowing what type of animal are you, what type of seed are you. So it's very important to know thyself first, and also then when you get into certain environments. So for me, set in stone, things don't change, and you start learning these as you go along with your career, because they always ask you in interviews, do you have questions for us? And you actually don't realize that you're also interviewing them. You're actually going in there and you're saying, oh yeah, why did the previous person leave? No, get to the crux of it. Let's understand this business. If I come in tomorrow and I want to change this, typically how long will it take? Why does it take long? What's the problems? How do you embrace change? How do you embrace technology? What is the biggest change that you guys had? How have you actually pivoted from it? What was the culture when that change took place? Because if you don't know those things and you want to come in and change the world, geez, you're in for a big shock.
That describes it well. I mean, lots of lessons there. For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end, so please add your questions to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. I do see some questions coming through already. Now, Mphahlela, you mentioned you are an entrepreneur, but now I noticed you also a lecturer and there's a life coach also on your CV. So how do you get involved in all these different pursuits?
As I said, I've got Lego puzzles all over the place. So I've always been one to say if there's a problem. So for example, there was a period the pass rate wasn't good, and I said let me get involved because there's no problem. There's this notion that there's problems, but we're always sitting on the side fence. Get on the field and do something about it. Recently saw the RTC pass rate at 14%. What are we doing about
Oh,
it? We
it's
need to then
terrible.
get on. How do we help people? So I then went into to lecture at Monash, and I used to lecture there during the COVID period. It was very close to home. I since haven't I stopped lecturing because now I've moved away from that side of Roodepoort, so I don't lecture anymore. But I still mentor guys that are doing, for example, CTA or doing third year. But for me, I was saying, okay, the pass rates are not good. Clearly, there's a fundamental problem. Instead of sitting and whining and saying, oh, South African football is not great, it suffers problem. Oh, the roads are not good. So I said, let me get on the field. Let me help. I've been there before. I know what it feels like to fail. Maybe it's not necessarily that these guys don't get the concept. It's just maybe it's taught in a different way. So that's when I got involved in that. And also just, you know, because I've had these experiences and understood how, certain things that I've passed through, I don't want someone else to pass through it. Why must they go through the same thing when I could just be like, there's actually a speed bump there. And when you get there, pivot this way. I lose nothing from it. And I always believe that, you have to always be a light in someone else's life. So that's why for me, that life coaching and having conversations with individuals, it's free. I do it because it gives me joy. It gives me joy to see someone say, and get a WhatsApp. I was in first year, now I'm a chartered accountant because of your help and your guidance. Or I was studying engineering and thank you for the tips. I got the work. It's exciting. It really gives you that joy. Say, wow, okay, at least there's something that you have to give back. There's a higher purpose for the reason we're all here on this earth. There's something else beyond the money and everything else. It's just how do we give back? How do we stay human? And that's important for me.
I hear you. I hear you. I have a few more questions, but there's questions coming through from the audience, and I'd rather get you to get to those questions first.
Okay, cool.
So we've got a question from Lerato who says, how has the CSA designation shaped the professional that you are today?
It really has. It's given me the ability to understand that CSA is the key to the door. You haven't really made it. And a lot of the times we think once you become a CASA, you must have this chip on your shoulder that I'm better than anyone. It's not the case. You're there to learn. It opens doors. It opens a whole lot of doors. You can literally work overseas. You can work in a tech company. You can work in pretty much any company because the finance element will always be there. But when you get in front of, let's say, a specific door, what value are you adding? Because we all chartered accountants. 35,000 of us are chartered accountants. What makes you different? What's your unique selling factor? What differentiates you? When you walk through the door and say, what sticks to a person's head? I mean, a lot of people do the same thing that you do. So for us, the professional, it molds you, but also it's because your ability to take or become a sponge, your ability to learn from others, your ability to say, yes, I'm a chartered accountant, but there's chartered accountants who've got 40, 50 years experience. What can I learn from that well of wisdom? There's chartered accountants that are newly qualified. What can I learn from those as well? So it's just the ability to know that you can learn from everyone. You don't have to necessarily be a chartered accountant that you're learning from, but you can learn across. The ability to learn is very important. And it doesn't come from books only. It comes from individuals. It comes from people that you spend time with. It's very important to realize that the CASA is the ticket to the game. Now you're at the game. Now you're at
You
the
must
game.
play. Now you must
Now you
play.
must play. And
Yeah.
that's why if you look at the best players, even the best of the best, they've got a team around them. Have the right team around you, have the right support structures around you, and you will realize that you will become a powerhouse, definitely.
A question from Kosana who says, what strategies did you use to manage your studies while working as a trainee?
I was ruthless because I'd felt the pain of failure. And when I say I was ruthless, I literally, if you invite me to a braai, and today is the 9th, your bride's on the 19th, I'm not pitching because it's messing up my schedule. So when I failed in Kosana, I realized that my problem was not the knowledge. I knew IS 12 paragraph 15, I could regurgitate it. My problem was my exam technique. I was chasing the quantity and not the quality. I would start question 1 at question 1 because it's question 1 and not say, but hold on, I can start at question 7 because that's quicker. It's going to take me less time. I also started moving. I mean, back then it was 1 minute, 1.5 minutes per mark. I cut that down to 1.2, which gave me an extra 30 minutes for rereading with context. Because usually we read first with no questions, and the question came, but I didn't go back. Now I wanted to go to what I've read and force it that direction. I then read again. Here's the question now with the context. What am I trying to achieve? So I had less time, but what I was doing, I was actually now looking for the correct, because sometimes we find ourselves as a student writing things that were not even relevant because it wasn't asked. But because you want to force it, you had read this thing, you say, oh, I know this. You're already preempting what the question will be. The question didn't ask that. The question didn't ask for that. So I started learning and relearning. I also started having a methodology. I'd start work at 7 a.m., knock off at 4, take a break from the client, drive back to the office till 10 p.m. every evening. So Monday to Thursday, we'd do that. Friday, we'd knock off a bit early, 8 p.m. Saturday, I was at it again, rest on Sunday. I also had my 4 books of mistakes. And every time I'd make a mistake, let's say we're doing deferred tax and I didn't know how to deal with a rate change, I'd go in and write it. When there's a rate change, I actually make this mistake. 2 days before a test or an exam, I'd go to my book of mistakes. I'd only look at that. The day before the exam, I would not study. I would not open a book. I'd go watch movies. I would go relax. Because then I'd prepared. When I also had a problem when it was cold, I couldn't concentrate. It's a funny thing. So I started going to the office just with a shirt on, put the aircon on 16, and I did tuts because I was simulating the conditions. And best believe when I wrote my board 2, I still remember it is what an old UNISA building. It wasn't at Gallagher, and it was freezing. It was winter. So I wrote the June, which is the one that people get 14% for, which is known as you'll fail it. And I passed that one. But the conditions were cold, and I practiced for cold conditions. So it was the preparation that changed everything for me.
We've got a question from Nombuso who says, what did you do to deal with discouragements? I'm serving art. Ooh, I've lost it. We might have a bit of technical difficulty, so hopefully Mphahlela can jump back on. While he's back on, serving articles and in auditing and studying is not easy, but people have succeeded, and you need to have a plan. So just the way he was explaining it now in terms of planning, structuring, making sure you plan your day. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And looks like he's joining us again. So let's just see if we can bring him back on stage. Mphahlela, are you with us?
Sorry, guys, I don't know what happened there.
No worries, no
blame
worries.
load
I think
shedding. Clearly, it's not load
the
shedding.
the advice was just too hot, so the internet couldn't deal with it. So let's go. I'm going to do this question, and I think we've got one more question, and then I'll
Okay.
leave you to it. But Nombuso wants to know, what did you do to deal with discouragements? I'm serving articles in auditing and studying. And
Yeah,
maybe
Nombuso,
before you answer, I'll add on a second question as well. She says she's doing CTA next year, and she's scared, mentally drained, financially drained, and writing exams next week. So how do you keep going when you feel like you're crawling?
Yeah, Nombuso, it's very difficult. But also remember that this is a journey. It's part of the journey, right? I think a lot of the times we focus on the destination and not the journey. A lot of the time, everyone says, "Oh, but let's have the golden, the delta." But how you get to the delta might not be the same. As Wade said, he probably flew right through, past everything. You probably now taking the longer route. You're cycling there, so there will be rain as you cycle there. There will be where you have to find shelter. And if you need to find shelter, know where your safe nest is. You have to go into a safe nest. When you know that, okay, it's tough, it's hard, have a safe nest. Have a person within where you're serving articles, have a mentor partner, say, listen, this is what's going on. Can I actually complete this job, do it well to the best of my ability? But the great thing is with auditing, you're already in the audit space. Make sure that you actually understanding the concepts of auditing while you're in the job. And also make sure, where are you weak? Stop spending time where you're strong. If you know you're good at FINAC, don't spend hours and hours doing feel-good questions and tats on FINAC. Go and do the questions in MANAC that you know are difficult and they keep you angry and discouraged. I'd rather have you discouraged and in pain in preparation than sitting in that exam and you crying because you don't know how to deal with standard costing. Rather deal with the standard costing, get it wrong. Have individuals that you can say, can we have a conversation? How do you deal with this? How does this concept work? Because sometimes you'll find that you're probably good at a concept, you just don't know how to articulate it. Find a way to understand where's the area. Also, consult. A lot of the times I realize that we sit in class paying a lot of money to get the knowledge and you're just listening. If you do not know, the lecturer is there actually to educate you. So if you don't know, raise your hand and say, sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't understand that concept. Repeat it. They will repeat it because that's what they are there for. And a lot of the times, even back in my varsity days, we just keep quiet. Lecturer goes, is everyone happy? Yeah, cool, cheers, bye. You then get home and you struggle alone. There is no need. So if you're in the office and you've got other guys doing, serving articles and also studying, create a group, work with them, ask them to mark your tats because then you're not marking yourself. Ensure that you've got a community, build a community. The discouragement will come because you're human. You will feel, oh my word, maybe I'm not meant for this, but you literally have to get through it. It's one of those that you say, okay, maybe today I'm not feeling good. I'm going to sit, buy myself some ice cream and do nothing. It's okay. It really, really is okay. You are not a robot. You're not going to be running at full steam. It happens in business. You'll wake up thinking you'll have a great day and you have the worst business day. But tomorrow is a new day. You start again, you pick up the pieces and you ensure that you go forward.
And if I can just add one more thing, Nombuso, when you become a chartered accountant, nobody's going to ask you, how long did you take to become a chartered accountant? But like Mphahlela said, he failed his third year. I failed June of my third year. It's the first time we're dealing with this kind of negative, like it feels like you're being punched in the face for the first time. But the most important thing is that you don't stop, you don't give up, you keep going. Then nobody's going to ask you, how long did it take you to become a chartered accountant? And we're going to take one more question because I don't want to steal all his time. Is from Cabello, who says, considering the networking is important in your field, how do you approach it? And what are some of the biggest challenges you face in your space and how do you overcome them?
Networking is quite an interesting one. I call it relationship building. I think the word networking for me, I don't use it because it seems like we're connecting, cables and stuff. I call it relationship building. And once you call it relationship building, you realize that it's not a once off. You build the relationship. A lot of the times we go to these networking events and a big speaker is there and he gets flooded by all these people. And probably what value is he going to get out of it? Because a relationship is two ways. What am I actually building? What am I also bringing to the table? So to actually put it into a nice summary is, who do you want to build relationships with? You being here on this chat, for example, is a relationship opener. You actually hear, you ask the question. Let's say, for example, later on, you pop me a message. Hey, I was on the thing. I asked that question. Oh, great question. So what do? You build a relationship. It's not a matter of I go to an event, I leave my business card. Oh, and this is what we do a lot. Attend an event, business card, following day. Oh, we met. This is my service. This is what I sell. But you don't even know me. You don't actually know that I actually love F1 and Red Bull is coming to the province. If you knew that, you could have said, hey, guess what? No, you're an F1 fan. Red Bull's got it. They're spinning you in Santon. Do you want to come through? Now, guess what? I'm now in my comfort zone. Now the relationship gets stronger because you thought of me. You had me in mind. We go, we enjoy it. It builds a relationship. When you then say, I've got a value proposition or I'm selling something, for me, it's easier because I know that you know me at a human element level, not just a transactional level. A lot of the times we go to these networking events, to say business cards. I've sent out 10 the following day. Hi, this is my name. I'm Kabelo. Can I sell you this? It doesn't work. You don't know me. I don't have the trust element yet. We've not built a trust relationship. People buy from people they trust. If you're referred, then it's a different story. But if you're not referred and it's cold, it doesn't work. So it's important that you build relationships, and the right relationships, not transactional relationships.
Sage advice. Any last few words from you or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
Now, I think for the audience, those that are studying, all the best. Those that are chartered accountants, well done. This is step one. And those that are actually at the end of their careers, we the young guys are coming up. Let us run the space.
Short and sweet. That's a good way to end. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Mphahlela, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much, Wade. Really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.